Alright, welcome to our Chapter 1 playthrough of the Mice and Mystics base game, which features the story entitled Sorrow and Remembrance. And before we get going on this, we're going to talk a little bit about the rules and how you set up a chapter, how you know what you're supposed to do in a chapter, and so on and so forth. So we'll take a look at the initial blurbs, fluff text, and setup instructions before we get going. I will be describing some rules and tactics as I go along, but the intention of this version of the playthrough is to try to keep my rambling a little bit on the shorter side. I did do an extended Chapter 1 video already, and it wound up being really long. And as a result, I figured there's probably a lot of people who will not have the patience to sit through it. Maybe somebody who's involved in the game wants to hear every last one of my thoughts going into it, but frankly, just looking at it, I didn't think there would be as much interest as I might have hoped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow through this a little bit more quickly, try to keep my rambling a little shorter, and see if I can get that time maybe even cut in half for Chapter 1. One thing I do want to mention really quickly off the bat is I am fighting a bit of a sinus infection deal here, so pardon me if my voice is a little nasally. But, you know, on the good side, being sick, I can kind of excuse myself from work a little bit and record a video. So there's that. All right, so here's the setup of the first room, but and we're going to see the overall setup of the entire chapter here, the tokens that we might be needing along the way, and the characters and enemies, etc. But before we dive into that, I want to give a summary of the intro and the setup. So let's turn to that now. Right, so Mice and Mystics is a story-based dungeon crawler, and as a result, while there is a rule book, there is also a storybook that is going to detail what you're working through, what you're trying to achieve, and it's set up kind of like a chapter book, like a storybook that you might read to your kid. It's kind of the whimsical nature of the setup here. And you know, there's lovely cover art here. And again, this is book 1 because we've got expansions coming up that tell additional stories. But this one is entitled Sorrow and Remembrance, which will make sense, of course, as we go on, but I'm not going to give any spoilers here. The first page has some introductory elements, some rules about how to understand what you're seeing in the storybook, but we'll go through that as we read it. I do want to note a couple of things here, and that is that when you're playing a special campaign, or a campaign, and you're not simply doing one-off chapters, then there's a couple of things to bear in mind. One is that you take out the Sorrow Blade and the Ring of Remembrance from your search deck, because part of the story is going to involve you finding them later, so it would make sense for you to be able to accidentally find them earlier before the story calls for it. Similarly, in Chapter 3, part of the story is going to involve something that will free up an entity named Meeps, and that entity is going to be such that Imaginos has a skill available to him, but again, it wouldn't make sense story-wise for him to have the ability in Chapter 1 when you wind up kind of getting the ability in Chapter 3. So with that out of the way, the other thing to note about campaign is that you can gain levels, as it were, in the game, which basically just means you're adding skills to your mice, and those will carry through from chapter to chapter. You're also going to be able to keep your starting gear, of course. If you have lost starting gear along the way, you will be able to reclaim starting gear in between chapters. And you're also going to be able to keep one item per mouse to carry between chapters. And that's something to bear in mind, because you're going to want to ideally try to find the best equipment for people, for mice, as you go as early as possible to try to get them that gear that is the best one you like to keep for them, and try to have it for most of, if not all, of the game. But the story begins basically with a intro blurb, and I'm going to summarize this. It starts out with a old mouse reading his grandson a story, and that is the story that we're about to tell in playing the game. So it's a mouse reading a bedtime story to his grand mouse, and basically, again, what we're doing is the story. The story basically consists of a pretty classic tale, almost hackneyed, but it's well told, and you don't need to be super innovative with these kinds of classic tales, especially in the kind of the vibe of this game. But basically, the king has lost his wife, fell into the clutches of a seductive sorceress named Vanestra. Vanestra seems to be scheming to take power, possibly to begin waging war on a neighboring kingdom. The prince and his friends have begun to conspire against her, and as a result, she has them thrown into jail in a sort of preemptive strike. And what happens next is basically when the mice are in the jail, they then decide to try to escape the jail by means of the magic of the court wizard Maginos. But Maginos only has a little bit of juice, as it were, available to him. And what he winds up doing, of course, is changing the group of people into mice so that they can escape through the bars, slip into the sewer, and vanish. The problem with this plan is, at least immediately, he does not have the ability to change them back. And that kind of kicks off our story as our little anthropomorphic mice take the field. They're able to keep a little bit of their gear, so Colin starts out with a breastplate and his trusty sword, and kind of away they go. So chapter 1 begins with them in the guard room, having slipped out of their cell, and of course, as they're about to escape into the sewers, the sorceress somehow has become aware of what they're doing and is moving to oppose them, and what she winds up doing is turning some of her own minions into rats and other such animals in order to pursue them. So what you wind up having is, of course, her enemies showing up all over the place, trying to get in your way. But you're going through a castle in the size of mice, so if you run into a centipede, that's not necessarily Vanestra's doing. It's just there's centipedes down there, and you've got to deal with it because you're a little mouse. But the overall idea here is you need to kind of keep moving because people are trying to hunt you down from behind. And as a result, that's kind of where the surge mechanic comes in. Basically, if you tarry too long or the fight goes badly, the enemy's going to get reinforced, and you're going to eventually run out of time. There is a ticking clock in the game. You have to achieve your victory conditions before that time runs out. So essentially, the victory condition for the first chapter is get the heck out of the castle and escape. So you're going to be able to get to the courtyard tile, which is the outside of the castle. You're going to be able to clear it of all the enemies and get onto the tree entrance space. In other words, you're going to dive into a hole in a tree to get away. You need to do all of that before time runs out, and of course before your entire party is captured at one time. That's pretty much it. And the way that's described, again, defeat condition: if the timer runs out on the chapter track, or if all the mice are captured at the same time, you lose the game. Otherwise, if you get to the end before time runs out, you clear that tile, you're good to go. The chapter end begins on page 6, and of course the hourglass always begins on page 1. The party setup declares that you must select 4 of the 6 mice included in the game, but Lily cannot be one of them, and that's because, some minor spoiler here, chapter 2 is going to involve you finding her. Now, it also tells you how to set up the encounter deck. You have 18 encounter cards, 9 standard and 9 difficult. The encounter deck setup is telling you to shuffle up the 9 standard and not use the difficult ones just yet. It's chapter 1. We're not going to hit you over the head too hard. It also shows you how to set up the tiles. And if we bop over to the map, we can see that's more or less how I have it set up. And you're also going to have in the storybook this little icon indicating where you are supposed to start at the beginning of the chapter. So that's not on the tile itself. I have it here, but it's actually an object that I'm going to move out of the way. It's just there kind of to denote where you're supposed to start. So we're starting in that space right there where those party members are. It also is going to give you in the tile setup, it's going to tell you the setup for the first tile, which is a little bit weird. A lot of times it actually just gives that to you in the description of the tile itself. For some reason it did it in the overall setup right here. You have to kind of check both places. But again, the rule here is essentially, and if you watch the tutorial, this should be, most of this should be a refresher, but basically when you go into a tile for the first time, you check to see if there's a special setup. If there is not, you draw an encounter card and follow the encounter card setup. If there is a special surge, as there is in the first room, then that will be what triggers when there is a surge. Otherwise, again, you would follow the encounter card if there is one face up. Because it's the first tile and we haven't drawn one, there wouldn't be one, so they kind of have to give you a special surge. In the first tile, we're told to place 3 rats on the tile, and I have already done that. The rules for placing minions are somewhat involved, and we'll deal with them as they come up. But basically, if all you have is melee minions, you spread them out over the minion entry spaces. That's these little footprints. So there are 3 minion entry spaces on this. You are told to try to spread the enemies out amongst them. So with 3 enemies and 3 spaces, that's kind of, there's not a lot of decision making there to be done. The first room is going to involve special surge, as I said, and that is going to apply to the whole tile. So when we trigger a surge, we will add 2 rat warriors. Hopefully that won't happen. The other thing going on here is there is a special search, and that is confined to this one space here, the helmet. If we get onto the helmet, we can search and find the Tinkerer's treasure. Now only Nez can use it, but as far as I can tell, any mouse can find it and then give it to Nez, and then Nez can use it. What's really nice about this is the Tinkerer's treasure allows Nez to just dive into the search deck and pick any item, basically weapon or armor, that he wants, which is a really nice way to, right off the bat, get one of your favorite items into the hands of one of your mice right away. As a result, I always take Nez as one of my 4 mice. I, generally speaking, whenever I can, try to take Tilda, because having a healer is very, very useful. So that pretty much defines 2 of the mice for me when I'm making my decision about the 4 mice to take. Remember, I can't take Lily. I then generally like to take Colin because I find him very useful. And I also really like to take Filch in this first map. 1, because there's a number of rats that show up. And 2, because one of the first things I like to try to get, if possible, is a good solid ranged attack for Filch. Now there are other ways to go with Filch. I'm not going to go into it, but because of he has an ability called Prehensile Tail that allows him to hold his starting weapon, a dagger, in his tail, leaving 2 hands free, so he can have both a ranged and a melee option available to him. And I just like that setup. So what I usually do on this chapter is get the Tinkerer's treasure and have Nez get a nice bow for Filch. So that usually means I'm taking Colin, Tilda, Filch, and Nez. But basically, what you're going to want to do as you go through this game is at least one person in the group should probably have read through the entire chapter description in order to have a sense of what's going on, because you're going to need to try to figure out how you're progressing through the map. Let's bop over to the map tool and see exactly why that is. All right, so basically the way in which you, so you start out in a tile, you deal with the tile, and the rule is basically, generally speaking, you have to kill all the enemies on the tile before you can move on. But then the question, of course, is how do you move on? Well, the first thing you'll notice when you look at the tiles is these weird color things on the side, and those are, it makes a little bit more sense here, where they're clearly indicating where the kind of the tunnel continues off the edge of the map, right? And basically, what these are is an indication of an exit or entrance onto or out of the tile, right? But in order for the mice to have the ability to move from one tile over to the other, both of the tiles have to have that aperture, and they also have to have the same color. So the mice cannot move from this tile directly to that tile as it is right now, because not only is there no color here, but even if there was, it would be this orange color instead of the blue color. Basically, think of the orange colors as being on the top floor, and the blue is the bottom floor. Right? You might think of it as above ground and below ground, daylight and darkness, however you want to try to remember it. But essentially, every tile is going to have gold on one side, blue on the other, and that's going to be an indication of how they're going to link up. So we are starting out with the tiles arranged like this, and there's nowhere to go from this tile because there's nothing adjacent. There's no rule except for one special chapter that lets you kind of go off the edge of a tile without a tile there. So what the mice are going to wind up having to do is use this flip space. The flip space is another place where you can use the explore action to move to a different tile. This is going to be the opposite side of this tile. When we flip, you're going to see that these now match up. And what this means is that the mice can bop down a level, move over here to this tile here. Now there is a flip space, which would then allow them to go up into the kitchen. But notice there's nowhere to go from there, because again, this tile here has no opening, and this tile here, if we flip this, has no opening to match that gold. So if you go to the kitchen, there's nowhere to go from the kitchen except back down to the tile where you were, which then allows you to bop over to this tile and then use this flip space to bop over to the courtyard. So again, this is not obvious from the initial picture in the storybook, which only shows one side of each tile, and therefore you're not always going to have a complete picture of what the maze that you're looking at, as it were, what it constitutes. So it's a really good idea to kind of sit down and take a look at that, but also take a look at the story of the chapter, because for instance, why would you go to the kitchen? Well, it's going to be fairly obvious when you get to this tile what exactly is going on with that kitchen option. You're going to go there to try to help somebody, but it's not obvious exactly what some of the repercussions might be if you're trying to make that decision. You need to have the full picture to be able to do that. There might also be times when there are multiple avenues towards the final destination, and you have to choose which one you want to take, and it might not be obvious which one might be the best for you, the one you want to pursue, etc. So in general, it's just a really good idea to try to do that. Plus, you might get a description of one tile, and it might say that you get one clue. Okay, what do clues do? Well, you have to read pretty much most of the chapter to find out that you need 3 clues to complete the chapter. So making a decision about whether to go for that clue or not is not obvious unless you have, again, the full picture. So always scan everything, but basically what we're going to be doing in this chapter is we're going to be diving into the tunnels and making our way to the courtyard, and we might or might not go into the kitchen. So that's pretty much where we're at right now. We have the initial setup, we have the information on the first tile, we have more or less made our decision about the party. So I'm going to go ahead and select my party, get the party members that I'm not using off the map, and dive in. So I'm going to go ahead and declare my party. I'm going to have Colin, Filch, Nez, and Tilda in my party. They're going to show up here with their stats and their equipment. Notice none of them have abilities. When you start the game, each of your mice is going to be allowed to pick one ability. I'm going to go ahead and pick my favorites for these mice, or at least some of my favorites. I really like Give Order for Colin. For Nez, there's a couple good ones, but I'm going to go ahead and pick Set Trap. The reason being, there are times when that can be extremely valuable. There are other times when it doesn't really, it's not very useful, but I'd rather have one that can be a potential game changer than one that is generally useful, but doesn't really have that much of an impact. And then for Filch, I am going to take my favorite find ability. Notice with Tilda, I took major heal. The reason for that is while there is, you want her to, she's a healer, but she doesn't have an innate healing talent. You have to have an ability. The two kind of core healing abilities for her are major heal and first aid. But first aid is something that's available to all the mice. And one thing I definitely want to mention here is that the first aid ability is the only healing ability that anyone other than Tilda can have. So even though she's better at using it, and it's really nice for her to have, the fact is that you're going to have later chapters where the party is split, and the party that is not with Tilda is going to be in a bad way all too often unless one of those people has the first aid ability. I like to give it to Nez basically because I find that he's the one who very often is not using a lot of cheese, and he's in those situations not going to be the one with Tilda. So that's more or less the reason I go with it. All right, so we have our party set. We've got their abilities. They already have their standard equipment. We've got our enemies there. We just need to add them to initiative, and away we go. I'm going to shuffle the initiative. Colin is first, which means he's not getting a cheese for his special ability, but the Rat Warriors are down in the initiative, which is nice. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to begin our first combat. All right, so let's see how this goes. I mentioned already that I try to get onto the helmet to try to get Filch a bow. That is still my plan. I try to keep my distance from these rats as much as I possibly can. Even though I don't have any ranged options in my party, I might be able to get one. And I like to kind of concentrate fire a little bit and also use searches before they close with me. So generally speaking, I go after this rat first. So I'm just going to hit him with Colin right away. Now notice Colin, I'm not rolling to move because he can't fail to move 2 spaces. So I'm just going to move him over. Actually, I'll move him into an adjacent space because there's no reason to go that far. And he's going to attack with 3 attack dice. The reason for that is he has a battle of 2. And he has a sword, which gives him a +1. So he's attacking with 3 attack dice. And he got 2 bows, which do not help him because he's making a melee attack. He got 1 hit. So that's fairly likely to get blocked. But the Rat Warrior is rolling 2 defense dice. That's listed on their initiative card. And I have it here on the mouse over as a reminder. But he's going to roll 2 defense dice. Those are just native to him. And he got 2 shields. Fortunately, he did not roll any cheese, but he did block the attack, so he's all safe and sound. Filch, on his turn, I think is going to do the same thing. He's going to move over here and try to kill this rat. And what's nice about him is he's got a dagger equipped, and the dagger has this ability that says that if you are attacking someone lower in the initiative track, then they roll 1 less die to defend. Which means even though he's rolling only 2 attack dice, if I can get this to go away, even though he's rolling only 2 attack dice, the enemy is only rolling 1 defense die, so that's pretty nice. But of course, Filch rolled no hits, so the enemy does not roll any defense. If you totally whiff, they don't roll. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to have Nez pile on. Nez is going to attack with 4, and the reason for that is his hammer is a +2. It's only a +1 if he's in the same space, but he's going to be in an adjacent space instead, and therefore he's going to roll 4 attack dice. Alright, as a result he got 2 swords, and he got a cheese. That allows him to gain a cheese, and that just goes into his stash. And that will allow him to possibly activate abilities or share. Now the enemy has to roll 2 shields on his 2 defense dice in order to survive this hit. He only rolled 1, and as a result, that rat is dead. When you kill a rat, he's simply removed from the map. So I'll just go ahead and delete that token. And there's no special repercussions with Nez killing it. Had Filch killed that rat, he would have gotten a cheese because of his special ability, but basically that rat is simply removed. Now, importantly, he didn't roll any cheese, so we haven't had to deal with the cheese wheel just yet. It's now the rat's turn. Now, these rats, none of them can reach us just yet, so they're simply going to roll their movement. This guy can move 2. Now they're going to try to move towards the closest mouse. These guys are tied for being the closest, and therefore he's going to go after the one that has the higher initiative. So I'll just move him like so, trying to get to Colin. This rat can move also 2, and he's also going to move, they're pretty much equidistant, so he's going to move 1, 2 spaces like so. That's the end of the rat turn, but the rats have a special ability, aggressive, and that, again, the description of that is on their initiative card. But what that basically means is when they finish their turn, they move up 1 spot in the initiative order. It's now Tilda's turn, and at this point the rats are going to be more or less likely to close with us next round. I'm going to try to advance this going forward. So I think what I'm going to have Tilda do is move over and try to find that special item over here. She is currently my worst attacker, so I'm just going to have her do the searching. I didn't roll again for her movement because nobody can fail to move at least 2, not even Nez, who's the slowest member of the party. She found it. It's a special search, so I go into the deck and I specifically grab the Tinkerer's Treasure and add that to her pack. So that's now in her pack. Now, Nez can't use it, of course, until he comes into possession of it, but that's the end of Tilda's turn. She's got really nothing else to do. We come back around to Colin. Colin now, I think, is going to, let's see how far he can move. He rolled a 1 on the die. Add that to his 2 movement. He can move 3. But I think he's just going to move these 2 spaces. And again, adjacency is determined by whether you can span the distance between the spaces with your mouse's base. And he's going to try to kill this rat warrior here. He's going to roll his 3 attack. He gains 2 cheese and scores 1 hit, which is likely to be blocked, but we'll see. It's blocked in spades, so the rats are hardy this time around. Per usual, I think what we're going to have Filch do is, again, try to use the dagger until he can get a bow in hand. He's rolling 2 attack dice. Scores 2 hits. Again, the rat is, after the rat's turn, he's not going to be below Filch in initiative, but he is currently below Filch in initiative, therefore he's only rolling 1 die, therefore he's automatically killed, but I'm still going to roll his die to see if he rolls a cheese. He did in fact roll a cheese. What that means is that goes onto the cheese wheel. That, of course, is building up towards a surge, which would advance our page and bring new enemies onto the map, so I don't want that to happen. However, Filch's special ability is very, very nice. He's got the Pilfer ability, which says that normally when he kills a minion, he adds 1 cheese to his stash. If it was a rat, he can take that cheese from the minion wheel instead of from the stash. So I'm actually going to immediately take that back off the wheel. Now, importantly, the cheese goes onto the wheel first. Therefore, had we had 5 cheese on the wheel, that would have triggered a surge, even though Filch is immediately grabbing it. It goes onto the wheel as soon as it's rolled. Then Filch triggers his ability for killing that rat. So the first thing we're going to do is to delete that rat token. We already took 1 off of the wheel. We're going to go ahead and give Filch 1 cheese as a result. So we now have, I believe, 4 cheese in the party, which would allow us to do some healing if we needed to. It's also going to give Filch the ability to maybe use the find ability. But I might want to save a couple for the next tile, which can potentially get out of hand. However, that's the end of Filch's turn. He's got nothing else that he really wants to do. He could trade with somebody to share cheese around. He actually might do that. I might go ahead and trade with Colin and just grab 1 of those cheese, just so that he does have 2 cheese on him in case it comes around to him again and I do want to search with him. The last rat is going to roll his movement. He gets a 3, but he's just going to go towards the closest mouse, which is Colin and Filch are tied for closest. He's going to try to engage Colin. He will move into their space if he can, which he can. So he's now sharing the space with Colin and Filch, he's then going to attack the closest mouse that has not yet been attacked. And there are 2 mice tied again for that. So again, he's going for the highest in initiative. He rolls 2 attack dice. Now, he did cheese the wheel. Importantly, when I roll their movement, I think I rolled a movement of 1 cheese with somebody for Filch. That does not merit him gaining a cheese, nor does the rat get cheese onto the wheel for rolling for anything other than attack and defense. But he did roll a cheese while attacking, so he did cheese the wheel. And Colin now has to reckon with the fact that the rat scored 1 hit against him. Colin is rolling 2 defense dice. The reason is he's got 1 native defense, and he has the leather breastplate, which adds 1 to his defense. So Colin is rolling 2 defense to try to counter that 1 hit. He gained a cheese and blocked the hit. So nothing really happened from that attack other than giving Colin a cheese and adding 1 cheese to the wheel. That ends the rat's turn. He now again moves up in initiative, and it's Nez's turn. And I think what we're going to do with Nez is move over here. And again, I'm not going to roll because he can't fail. He's then going to trade with Tilda in order to get the Tinkerer's Treasure in hand. He's then going to use that Tinkerer's Treasure, which, because the card doesn't specify, it's apparently a free action. And he's going to go ahead and grab the Accurate Bow, which is the one I like to give to Filch. So he's now in possession of that. He can't use it, but he can grab it. And he can then give it to Filch. However, he's already traded. It's a free action, but he's already done it. And you only get 1 free action of each type. So he cannot then pass that on to Filch. However, when Filch's turn comes around, Filch can grab it from Nez. So now I have to reckon with a decision. Because Nez has moved, but he hasn't used his action. He can try to clobber that rat. The consequence of that is that if he's successful in killing that rat, then what will happen is we come to Tilda's turn, and Tilda can go ahead and move us on to the next tile. However, I might not necessarily want to do that. And the reason is, if I do that, then he's still in possession of the bow. Filch doesn't have it yet. And when we flip to the next tile, I'll just show you really quick, we're going to plop down into the water here. And one of the consequences of being in water is you can't use any free actions, which is going to involve trading, but also equipping. So even if Filch has the bow, he's not going to be able to equip it once he's in the water. He's going to have to somehow get out of the water first. So that's something that I'm bearing in mind. But, the alternative is to let the rat run around and run amok and swing away and potentially add even more cheese or hurt people. So I think because I only have 1 cheese on here, and the chances of waiting, or the odds of waiting until Filch is the one who takes him out to try to remove that cheese, I don't think I'm going to risk that. So instead, what I think I'm going to do is just go ahead and clobber this guy, because if I do kill him, then even if I wait another cycle to make sure I'm fully equipped, I'm still only at 2 cheese, which isn't the worst in the world on that wheel. So that's what I'm going to do. And Nez is cheesing up. He has gained 2 more cheese, bringing him to 3. But he only scored 1 hit, so it's unlikely to kill this guy, but you never know. So that's a pretty much worst case scenario. He didn't kill him, and he added a cheese to the wheel. But that is Nez's turn. It's now Tilda's turn. Now, she's going to try to kill that guy, and the reason being, there's a rule. The way the rule works is if you come to the bottom of initiative and cycle back to the beginning, you add cheese to the wheel if there are no enemies on the track. But there is, in a forum post, there's a note from the designer of the game that it seems kind of silly to have the last person not attack for a reason like that. It seems kind of anti-thematic, and it doesn't really seem like in keeping with the mechanic that's forcing you to go quickly that you would purposefully not attack in order to go more quickly through the fight. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So basically what he says is, if you want to have a house rule where if the last person kills the last enemy, then when it comes around again, you don't have to add cheese to the wheel. I play with that because I think it makes a whole lot more sense, and I'm not going to explain it more than that. But she didn't hit anybody. She didn't hit at all. Therefore, he doesn't roll any defense dice, so it was all a moot point. It's now Colin's turn. He has no reason not to try to kill that guy. He rolled 3 swords. That's an automatic kill, but he still, again, might cheese the wheel. He did not. He died fruitlessly. All right, we have 2 cheese on the wheel. The rats are no longer on the initiative track. Colin doesn't really have too much else to do except maybe divvy cheese around. I think what I'm going to have him do is give a cheese to Tilda and keep a cheese for give order. So I'm going to go ahead and trade with Tilda for 1 cheese. And then he's going to be done. Filch then is going to search, and if he finds something, he has the 2 cheese on him to use the find ability, but he didn't find anything. He is also going to trade with Nez to get the bow. And then he's going to equip the bow. Both of those are free actions. So he is now set to go. He's used his action to search. He'll move over here. It's not going to do anything. Nez is also going to give some cheese over to Tilda because I want to have him keep 2 for set trap, but he doesn't need more than that right now. And then he's also going to search because why not? He didn't find anything. And then Tilda, who can't fail to, even on the lowest roll, get 3, so she's going to go here. She's going to move us on using her explore action on the flip space, and we are off to tile 2. So we'll go ahead and flip this and get our mice positioned here. We will clear our search markers. That's just a way for me to track who has successfully searched on a tile, because again of that rule dictating that you can only successfully search on each tile face once with each mouse. So I will clear the search markers and we are good to go for tile 2. Alright, now bopping over to the storybook really quick, we will check and you want to do this every time you change tiles, check to see if there are any rules for the tile that you're moving to. And there are for this one. First of all, there is a special rule that says that in order to leave this tile, and the only place you can really leave it is by the flip space or through here, before you can use an explore action on the exit area to leave the sewer tile, you have to have all the mice out of the water on this side of the water. So in other words, you can't scamper out over here or leave people here and then just duck out of the room. You got to make sure everybody's out of the water on the right side. You also have, and this applies to all the water spaces, they are all a special search space, which allows you to, on a successful search, if you wish, you can grab the fishhook and thread, which you very much do want to do, and the reason for that is it's one of the best ways to get out of water. Getting out of water is kind of a pain. Let's go over the water rules really quick, and to do that, let's bop back to the map. That was all the special rules for this map, so we're also don't have a special setup for this map, and as a result, we are going to start combat when we do by drawing an encounter card for the first time. But there are a couple of rules here first. The first rule is that in water with a current, as denoted by the arrows here, that basically applies to all of these. If you're in water with a current, what happens is if you finish your turn on a water space with a current, then at the end of your turn, you are swept downstream 1 space. If you are swept off the map, you are captured, which is no good. So you want to make sure that doesn't happen. You are also able to move into water, and that includes moving from water to water, but that will terminate the move action. And it doesn't end your turn, but it ends your move. You are also not able to move against the current. You can move downstream, you can move across the current, but you cannot move upstream. Therefore, you have a limited amount of time to get out of the water. The fishhook is going to be a nice way to get out of the water, and we'll go over that if we find it. But the other way to get out of water would be to roll a die. You spend a move. Your entire move is getting out of the water, and you're only successful if you roll a star on a single die. If you are getting out of water into a space where there are other mice, then for each mouse in that space that you're getting into, they're helping you out, and you add 1 die that you're rolling to try to find a star. So if Nez successfully gets out and then Colin successfully gets out and Nez or Filch then tries to get out, he's going to roll 3 dice and he only needs 1 star on any of those 3 to get out. So it's once you get somebody out, it's easier. The problem is we're on the far side from where we want to be. So generally speaking, the best thing to do is try to find that fish hook right off the bat and see if you can drop it and get out of the water with everybody real quick. But that entails being lucky on that first roll, and we don't even know who we're fighting first yet. So let's go ahead and draw our encounter card and see what we get. Our encounter card is, and this is how encounter cards work, we are going to face, as we know, they're all standard. There's no special rules. We'll see those when they come up. But you'll notice there's some variability here. There are 9 cards, and they each have 6 entries for enemies. They tend to get a little harder, but not always. I'd rather fight 2 rats and 4 roaches than 5 greedy roaches any day. Fighting 1 spider and 1 centipede is pretty awful. I'd rather do 3 elite rats than 1 each of those. So it's not necessarily the case you're going to get a worse encounter just because you're further along. This is more about getting some extra variability without having to print out more cards. But we are on page 1, so we use the page 1 entry, and we have 3 rats. Now this is then going to go face up on our encounter deck. If we trigger a surge, that surge will be a spider. That spider will then come in at that point, and it will be added to the bottom of the initiative if there are no enemies on the initiative track. At that point, the card is then discarded. And because there are no special surge rules, if we were to trigger a second surge, all that would happen would be the page would advance. There would be no additional enemies coming in. So that's how that would work. But we have 3 rats, and the rule on this is you place them on the minion entry spaces and you spread them out as much as possible. Other than that, I believe you can more or less choose what you want them to be doing. So first I'm going to add 1 to the initiative, and then I'm going to go ahead and drop them down. And since we're going to try to get over here, I think what I'm going to do is try to keep them as far away from me as I can by putting them like so. You never know how things are going to turn out, but that's more or less where we're at. And we then kick off because we added a rat to the initiative order. We were finishing Tilda's turn when we moved in, so we didn't cycle back through. We're not going to cycle back through, but because we placed initiative, a new enemy onto the track, and there were no enemies on the track, that triggers a complete reshuffling of the initiative order. So we hit the shuffle initiative. Colin is once again first, so Colin is not gaining cheese, and the rat warriors are coming next. That's relatively bad news because as soon as they take that first turn, they're now going first. But it is what it is. We'll see how we go. Colin doesn't have a lot to do because he doesn't have ranged attack, but he can do a couple of things that are going to help us out here. Before anything else, I'm going to want to check to see if he can find the fish hook and thread, because if he can, that's going to be a huge deciding factor in what I want to do with my turn. So the first thing I'm going to do is have him search for that fish hook and line. He was not successful doing so. As a result, he spent his action, and I don't necessarily think I want him to move anywhere. He could try to get out, but what I could do instead is spend a cheese to use his give order ability, and that would allow Filch, who, because we equipped his bow on the last tile, Filch can actually attack one of these rats, and if he gets lucky and kills one of them, he'll not only get one of our enemies off the board, but he'll take a cheese off the wheel, which would be very handy. So we'll see what we do. Now, the way the accurate bow works is it's a +1 to his ranged. Now, even though the battle has a sword on it, that's how many dice you roll when you attack, whether it's ranged or melee. So the accurate bow is allowing him to roll 3 ranged attack dice. And then there's a special bit of description here. If he rolls the bow with the star on it, that counts as 2 hits instead of 1. So this is a potentially high damage situation. He could potentially score 6 hits with 1 shot. He could one-shot some of the biggest enemies in the game with this bow if he gets really lucky. But because bows are less likely to hit than swords, On average, he's doing roughly the same amount of damage as Colin with it. But it's nice because he can do it at range, and we get a free shot here, basically, so we'll take it. And I guess I'll just fire at... This guy's 1, 2 away from attacking. This guy's 1, 2 away. This guy's 1, 2 away from attacking. So they're all equidistant, but we're going to try to move this way generally. So I'll just go after this guy, because why not? And that is definitely a dead rat because he rolled 3 hits in virtue of this one being a bow with a star on it. The rat is rolling 2 defense dice. Notice the I'm not taking 1 away. First of all, Filch is not lower in initiative. And secondly, that lower in initiative is only when he's using his dagger. That's the quality of his dagger, not of Filch. So Filch is attacking with the bow. He scored 3 hits. This guy's rolling 2 defense. He did cheese the wheel, so that then goes on the wheel. He didn't roll any blocks, so he is then killed. As a result, Filch pilfers that cheese off the wheel and takes it for himself. So that was a pretty good turn. We took a rat off the board. We didn't add any cheese to the wheel. Filch is up a cheese, and Colin didn't really have to do anything. Now Colin is done with this turn. He can't do any free actions, and as a result, he then gets swept down a space because of the current. We now come to the rats. We'll deal with them in turn. This guy's going to go to the closest mouse, which would be Colin, and his movement is only 1, so he moves the 1 space, but then he can still attack Colin. He rolls his 2 attack dice. He cheeses the wheel and adds 1 hit. Colin rolls his 2 defense, doesn't block, and therefore Colin takes the first wound of the game. The other rat, again, is not going to be able to fail to really endanger us, but he moves 1. Now, you can make a case that he's not adjacent, but again, adjacency says if you can span the distance, so I believe that is still an adjacent space. He then is going to attack Filch in virtue of being the highest option in initiative. He rolls 1 hit, and Filch rolls 2 defense. He doesn't have any armor, but his native defense is 2. He rolls 1 block. That's sufficient, so he doesn't take any wounds. The rats are done, but they do move up in initiative. It's now Filch's turn, and I think what Filch is going to do is, because we have cheese on the wheel and because he's the one that can take it off, I think he's going to try to attack and just stick near Colin and hope one of these guys is going to be able to find the fishhook for next time around. So he's just going to shoot... I guess it probably doesn't matter too much. He's going to shoot... yeah, it doesn't matter which one. So he'll shoot this guy, the guy that just attacked him. Now I could use the dagger. It would be 2 melee versus still 2 defense. But this is 3 dice, but bows are less likely. But because I'm rolling 3, I have more chance of rolling cheese, and I have a chance of rolling those double hits, which I just did. So that's why I was attacking with the bow instead. He gains a cheese in virtue of rolling a cheese, and this guy's hit for 2 hits, so he needs 2 shields to live. He does not live, but he does cheese the wheel. We're getting rather unlucky with that. So that goes on the wheel, but then again, Filch's ability when that guy dies is to take it right back off again. So this is why I love Filch so much. He has killed 2 rats, he's gained 3 cheese, and he's kept cheese off the wheel in doing so, which is very nice. If I'd been killing with somebody else, we'd be at 5 cheese right now, and in virtue of that being really close to adding a spider to this fight. But right now we only have 1 rat to deal with, and Filch had a good turn. Now he hasn't moved yet. He could try to move out of the water, but I think at this point I'm going to just bank on trying to get the fishhook or spending a couple of rounds trying to climb out afterwards. So I'm just going to let him end his turn and let the current sweep him down here to stick near Colin. Tilda then I am going to have search. She doesn't find anything. She will also end her turn and swim down. Nez is now going to search. He finds the fishhook. So I'm going to go into the... I keep doing that. I'm going to go into the... search deck and find the fishhook and thread so that we don't find it randomly later. That would go onto the storyboard. What you would do is you would grab your token for the fishhook. I'm just going to drop it down here to keep it close by, keep it handy. And I'm going to let him end his turn as well and get swept down. The reason being, if he drops it, the fishhook, he's got to drop it in the space that he's in, and none of these people would be able to benefit from it because they can't move over to it. So I'm going to have him, he could also move to this space and drop it here, but then he would then get swept further on. So I'm just going to have him on his turn go there, well, stay there, and then get swept down here. We will have to suffer a rat warrior attack, but because it's a free action to drop that fishhook, we know next round everybody's going to be able to get out of the water onto the right side of the stream. So I'm not as worried about killing that last rat, especially since I would start adding cheese to the wheel anyway. The rat warrior, however, does have an opportunity here to capture Colin if he gets a good roll, because he can do 2 damage, and Colin has 1 wound on him right now. So we'll have to see how that goes. So the rat's going to roll his 2 attack, and he whiffs completely. It was rather anticlimactic. Now he is aggressive, but he's nowhere else to go. He can't move up any further in initiative, so he's just done. Colin now is going to, I believe, I think what I'm going to do is I just want to get out of here quick, and I have the option of doing that. So what I'm going to do is have Colin try to kill that guy, and he rolls 2 swords, so it's likely to have killed him. We'll see. He rolls no cheese and no shields, so Colin has defeated that rat. Now, another option would have been to let him stay and let Filch try to kill him, and that might potentially have taken cheese off the wheel. But then at that point, if Filch failed, I would be left with Tilda and Nez to try to do it. It, in retrospect, probably would have been a good idea, now that I think about it, to try to get that cheese off. But I'm not super worried about it. And now Colin, with a free action, is going to go ahead and drop the fishhook. Now the fishhook basically says you treat the 2 spaces where the ends of the fishhook are as adjacent, and completely moving between the 2, you can move as though they're adjacent with 1 point. So what this allows him to do is just on his move normally, and again he can't fail to move at least 2. So that would be 1, 2, and he's by the exit space already. There are no more rats here, so that's pretty much Colin's turn. Filch is going to move as well, and again he also can't fail, so he'll move up here. And then he's going to search and fail. Tilda is also going to move up here. Now here's where we run into a bit of a snag. Nez can move out, and he could actually move all the way up to here and move us on. The problem with that is that if I move on from this tile to the next tile, if I leave this behind, the fishhook is gone. Now that's not the worst thing in the world if I don't go into the kitchen, but it's kind of handy to have that in the kitchen. So I have to decide, am I going into the kitchen? I kind of don't know yet. I kind of want to see where I'm at in terms of cheese before I do that, because looking ahead in the storybook, you'll see that the Surge in the kitchen is Brody the house cat, and he's really nasty. So almost no matter what, if I have a lot of cheese on the wheel, I don't tend to go into the kitchen because Brody's really awful. So it's hard to say right now what I'm going to wind up doing and whether I'm going to want to have that fishhook or not. But I also don't necessarily want to add cheese to the wheel. So it's a tough call, but I think I'm going to play it relatively safe and just have him move here and grab that fishhook. Now it's a free action to drop the fishhook, but it's a move action, or I'm sorry, a action to pick it up. And you have to be again on one of the end spaces to do so. So he could only move here, pick it up. That uses his action, so he couldn't have explored anyway. We then come around to Colin, and in virtue of cycling initiative with no enemies on there. We add 1 cheese to the wheel. We're up to 4. But another side benefit of this is Nez is going to be able to move us on. So Colin, Filch, and Tilda are all going to be able to search before we move on. So there is a side benefit of what I did. So Colin is going to try to find something. Let's hope it's good. He found a walnut shell breastplate, which is handy because the warrior or the healer can use this. It's just as good as a regular breastplate, but it also allows you to get out of water more easily. Now that's a little too late. There's no more water on this map, but it's still +1 defense that Nez can use. So he's going to give that right away to Nez. The only other person who could use this is Nez, because Colin and Tilda would be the only other candidates, but they already have breastplates. So we'll go ahead and give that there to Nez, the walnut shell. There we go. Now Nez doesn't have it equipped yet. He's going to have to do that on his turn, but that won't be a problem. One thing I did see that I forgot to do is that when Nez got that fishhook, he should have put that in the party stash. Okay. Filch, again, is just going to search. He doesn't find anything. Tilda is going to search as well. She doesn't find anything, and we did get a nice defense item. Nez is going to move. He's going to equip his breastplate, and then he will explore to move us on to the next tile. Now, it's unclear where you wind up getting positioned here. Like, do you go to the nearest space here? Can you go to either? I think you can kind of choose. It's really unclear. I don't think there's a rule on this, but this seems to be the most adjacent space. And I like going here because if I can put all my party there, then it's completely filled and no enemies can spawn there, which is very nice because it means that any enemies that are spawning are over here instead, pretty far away. I'm also going to clear the search markers, and then let's take a look at the storybook and see if there's any special rules for this tile. Well, lo and behold, there's something here. There's a story moment, and I'll summarize that, and then there's an optional side plot. So there's no real mechanical elements here. It's a standard tile, but they're making you aware of the fact that the kitchen is not necessarily something that you have to do. So again, I'll make that call when I see where I'm at. I can't go up into the kitchen until I kill the enemies first. And the story moment is basically you come into the tunnel and you hear the cook up in the kitchen screaming for help. So she's your friend, you like her, you want to go up and help her, but you're mice. So when you get up there, there's all kinds of complications. So we'll see if we want to do that later or not. All right. But because we are here in this tile and there are no special setup rules, we begin play by drawing an encounter card. And in virtue of that, we also discard that top card. So that's no longer there to provide additional surges on top of our current encounter card. But we just draw a new one. And we're still on page 1, which means we're facing 4 roaches. So the first thing we're going to do is add 4 roaches. We're going to put 1 to the initiative. And we're going to drop them on the map. Remember, they're melee, so you spread them out among the 2 possible spaces. Now, one of our special encounter card traits has shown up, and this is the ambush trait. The way this works is if you, we just placed enemies, obviously, and that's what you do when you draw an encounter card. You're pretty much always placing enemies for the first time. So the first thing we do is we're going to shuffle the initiative and see where we're at. And again, triggering that Colin is not first when we did that, so he gains a cheese. Secondly, the roaches are in 3rd place. That would normally be good. However, as a result of the ambush card, the roaches get to roll 1 die and move up the number of spaces rolled on that die. They rolled only a 1, which is actually very nice, potentially, because that keeps them below Filch in initiative, and therefore if Filch was to attack one of them with a dagger, they normally only roll 1 defense. They actually roll 0 with Filch's dagger ability because he's higher in initiative. Now, there's a couple of things to bear in mind here. First of all, the X would be where I would place a mousetrap if the other quality of an encounter card, the mousetrap quality, had shown up here. But it didn't, so we just ignore this. It's not doing anything. The other thing to bear in mind is you have roaches are a kind of a special enemy. And what they do basically is they have the hungry special ability, and that is again on their initiative card if you want to check it out. But basically, if they attack you, they will eat your cheese rather than wounding you for every successful hit. And what that means is cheese kind of counts as hit points against them, which is a little nice. It makes them less dangerous. They're also easy to kill. They only have 2 melee battle, and they have 1 defense die, so they're relatively easy to kill. Where it gets nasty is if you run into, there's not on this encounter card, but the previous encounter card had them, greedy roaches. Greedy roaches do the same thing, except when they eat your cheese, it goes onto the cheese wheel instead of just going back into the stash. So greedy roaches are not dangerous, except insofar as they can really, really advance that ticking clock for you, which is really nasty. But these are not greedy roaches, they're just regular roaches, and as such, we can dive into our fight. Now, Filch going first, he has that ranged weapon, and we are immediately faced with that old issue of line of sight. Now, if you were to draw a line from his center of his space to the center of this space, it's clearly going through a wall, so he cannot see that space. In order to attack them with his ranged, he'd have to move up at least to here, possibly to here, in order to shoot them. It's less clear if he can see that space. If you draw a line from the center of this space to the center of that space, it does go through this part of the wall. It certainly doesn't go through the black. It goes through kind of like the toe of this wall, just barely clipping it. I don't personally consider that to be blocking line of sight. Your group may differ, but I feel like from this space, he can see that space. So I'm going to go ahead and allow him to fire. He doesn't score any hits because he's looking for bows, but he does gain 1 cheese. Now he's actually up to 6 cheese, which allows him potentially to consider leveling up. And we do have a little bit of cheese in the party overall, and I'm not too worried about this encounter right now because the roaches are far away from us. I might want to do that. I think Filch is going to be attacking for the next little while, so he doesn't need cheese for fine. So I'm going to go ahead and spend 6 cheese to get him an ability, because I like to give him Energy Rush on top of the Find ability. Find hasn't been useful for me. Energy Rush, what this does is he can spend 2 cheese and take an extra action. So he could at any point just attack twice if he's got some extra cheese lying around, which is very handy again if you're facing rats and need to get cheese off the wheel. But Filch missed. I don't want him to move forward because I want him to stay away from the roaches. The roaches are then going to roll their movement. This guy can move 3. 1, 2, 3. This guy can move 1 only, so he'll move 1. This guy here can move 3. 1, 2, 3. And this guy also 3. 1, 2, 3. Not the best luck with movement, but again, they can't reach me on that first turn, so I'm not too worried about it. Tilda, I think, is because Colin has cheese to help buffer him, I'm not worried about him dying right now. So I think I'm just going to have her move up and start swinging. We're going to try to get some of these roaches off the board. She can move 4 spaces, but I think she only wants to move 2 to try to keep her distance a little bit. And she'll try to smush one of those roaches. All she did was gain a cheese, but that's not the end of the world. Colin will do the same thing, and I'm not going to roll his movement because he can't fail. In virtue of moving, he can't use Give Order, but his attack is pretty significant, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. No luck. Getting pretty unlucky with my dice roll here, although I'm piling up cheese, which isn't too bad. And the people in the front have a lot of cheese, so they're going to be fine defending us. Nez has also got some cheese, and he's just going to scamper up here as well. He should be able to kill a roach with 4 attack dice. That's what I'm talking about. It doesn't really matter which one. They're going to roll their defense. It's only 1 defense die, but he might roll a cheese. You never know. He did not. That's a squished roach. So he's gone, and that's Nez's turn. We come back around to Filch. Now, we're not moving the roaches up. They're not aggressive. That's a rat trait, not all enemies. But Filch is, I think, going to do the following. I think he's also going to move up. Yeah, so here's what we're going to do. He's going to move up into that same space. Now, he's going to be the one that the roaches attack first when they attack. So I'm going to make sure that he's got a couple of cheese on him. So I'm going to see who's got... Well, Nez is not going to get attacked, so he's just going to steal the cheese from Nez. So he's going to grab those 2 cheese. And that's, again, just because they're basically hit points at this point. But he's also then going to attack, this time with the dagger. The reason being, average damage-wise, it's maybe a little bit less than his bow because of that special quality of the bow. But the enemy is rolling 0 defense dice, so it's an automatic kill if I get even 1 sword, and there's no chance of adding cheese to the wheel with this attack. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I got a cheese and a kill, because again, that roach is not rolling any defense. So that roach is killed. We didn't add any cheese to the wheel, but also in virtue of killing a roach, I get a cheese, because that's Filch. So Filch is already back up to 4 cheese, which is pretty handy. Notice he's not taking that off the wheel, because that's only when he kills a rat, not a roach. But that is Filch's turn. It's now the roach's turn. We'll go ahead and move this guy, but we know he's moving 1 space and then attacking Filch. He can't move into the space because you can only have 4 people in 1 space at one time. He cheeses the wheel and does not hit, which is not the best thing in the world. Now remember, our surge is not too bad. It's 2 rats. Honestly, I might actually trigger that on purpose, because if I trigger that, I could probably kill them without having too much cheese on the wheel, and that gives me the option of going up into the kitchen and showing you guys that. But we'll see how this plays out. The other roach can move 3, which means he can also get in here and attack. Now he's attacking Tilda. Not that it matters too much, but that's because she's the first mouse in the initiative order that has not been attacked. He scores 1 hit, does not cheese the wheel. She rolls 2 defense, gains a cheese, does not block the attack, and therefore, in virtue of getting hit, loses that cheese. Now, I didn't need to bother doing that. I could have just stated it, but just for the record, that's how the mechanic works. She gains and then loses a cheese. So facing basic roaches, rolling cheese is effectively as good as rolling shields, unless you also roll shields and therefore can claim the cheese. But that is the turn of the roaches. It's now Tilda's turn. Now, when she attacks now, she's going to, because when she does, because she's sharing a space with Colin, her special ability on her mace is that it adds 1 to the battle for that attack for each wounded mouse that is on the same space. So Colin's on her same space. He's wounded. He's the only one wounded. She's rolling 3 attack dice instead of 2. And as a result, she hits once. He rolls his 1 defense die, doesn't block, and therefore is killed. We're down to 1 roach. That's Tilda's turn. Now, Colin is faced with a decision here, but I think what he might want to do... Yeah, so here's the choice. If I kill this roach now, I have Nez going next. Nez could either move us into the kitchen, which would be a bad idea because Brody would be virtually guaranteed of showing up real quick. Or Nez could hopefully roll a 3 on his die and get us here and move us on. But the odds of that are pretty slim. The worst thing this roach is going to do to me is eat a little cheese, maybe cheese the wheel and trigger a surge. But at this point, I'm almost guaranteed of doing that anyway. The only real recourse of getting out of that would be going into the kitchen, which I don't think I want to do until a surge is triggered. So Colin doesn't want to attack. What does Colin want to do? Well, he might want to... I think what he's going to do is just search. Yeah. He's just going to roll a search. Not successful. But again, I didn't want him to kill that roach. Nez, for the same reason, I don't want to kill that roach. Although, no, that's not true. I do maybe want Nez to kill that roach, because if Nez kills that roach, then I can bop to the next tile, because he's the last one in initiative. So I think I'll have Nez swing away. He gains a cheese, and he gets 2 hits, which means an automatic kill. But did we cheese the wheel? We did not. Okay. So the roaches are gone. That was Nez's turn. No point in moving him anywhere at this point. But the roaches are gone. And now it's Filch's turn. And again, we're not adding cheese to the wheel because the last person killed the last enemy, and we're using that house rule that we discussed. Now, Tilda, because she has 2 movement, can possibly fail to get there. Colin, because he has 2 movement, can possibly fail to get there. And Nez, with 1 movement, is very likely to fail to get there. But all 3 of them probably are going to be able to get there. So I think I'm going to risk Filch searching and maybe using that find ability before we move on. Try to get some gear for these mice. And no love. So Filch will just kind of move up here somewhere. And Tilda, we'll see how far she can move. She got a 3, so she can move us on. Cullen and Nez might be able to. But if I trigger a surge here, I'm going to have to fight rats. And I think I'm just going to have her move us on. Just keep this moving. We're trying to keep this short anyway. So with her action, she just moves us on to the next tile. I don't have any search markers to clear. So we're on to the next tile. And what we want to do now is check the storybook. So really quickly before moving on, the reason I'm not going into the kitchen is it's rather nasty. You have 8 roaches to start with. You got 3 here, and a couple up here. The roaches up here are trying to eat cheese. When they eat cheese, they add it to the wheel. You've got roaches all over the place. They're not rolling a ton of dice, but the odds of one of them rolling cheese on that first round is very high. So you're still going to have a bunch of roaches to deal with. And then in comes Brody if I got 5 cheese on the wheel. That's just ugly. Now, I could trigger a surge in that room, get the rats, kill those rats, and go into this room with little cheese on the wheel and probably be fine. But what's the benefit of this room? Really, it's an opportunity to get the Miss Maggie story achievement, which helps us later in the campaign. And again, if you haven't read the entire campaign, you might not know how valuable that is. It's pretty handy when you get it, when you need it later. But here's the thing. There's also another place when you can get this. So there's another opportunity, and honestly, it's, in my mind, better to get it in that later chapter as well. The reason being, not that it's any different or that it's necessarily super easier to get it there, but one of the things about getting the Miss Maggie achievement is you bump up the chapter end marker on your chapter track. In other words, you get 1 more page of time in completion of the chapter. And I find that I need that more in the other chapter than I do in the first chapter, especially given that with Brody in the room and all those roaches, that extra chapter that I'm getting is very often spent getting it in the first place. And that's less often the case in the other chapter. So I find that I don't mind not getting it in the first chapter. And that's why I wasn't too concerned about not getting in there. But you'll notice that reading past the kitchen, there's no special picture or information on the tile that we've just entered. And as a result, we are going to treat it as just a very vanilla, very plain chapter tile with no special rules. We're just going to draw an encounter card and heave 2. All right, so let's see where we're at with our encounter card on this tile. We're just going to go ahead and, where is it? Draw the encounter card. And, okay. Well, not the worst thing in the world. We're facing 4 greedy roaches, but they're relatively far away from us. The nasty thing about greedy roaches is they are going to add to the cheese wheel. So we're pretty likely to trigger a surge here pretty quickly. The good news is we're still on page 1, so we're not too worried about it, and the surge is 2 rats. So again, not too worried about that. The problem is it is an ambush card, so once again the roaches are very likely to be going near first, if not first. But let's go ahead and just execute this by adding, oh, I have a greedy roach here. It's worth noting as well that the rule is that if you have roaches on the map, in combat with you, they're on the initiative track, and then you get a greedy roach added in, then at that point all roaches are counted as greedy. So you don't ever have a mixture of greedy and non-greedy roaches, and that's why there's only 1 mini and 1 initiative card for... Actually, there's 2 initiative cards, I think, for the greedy and the non-greedy. But there's only 1 mini, and you never get confused. You always have all roaches are greedy roaches. But we need to shuffle the initiative. The roaches are 3rd again. Colin is not first, so he gains a cheese. But note, with greedy roaches, sometimes you're better off taking a wound than giving up a cheese, because that cheese goes onto the cheese wheel. So sometimes that's a strategic decision you want to bear in mind. But we do have a bunch of cheese in our party, and we need to roll for the ambush mechanic. He's once again only going up 1 space, but that does affect Filch, unfortunately. However, Tilda gets a chance to go first. I don't know if there's too much I want her to do. Each of these roaches is 1, 2, 3 spaces away. 1, 2, 3 spaces away. So each of them is only a 1 in 3 chance of being able to hit us or even attack us. She could heal Colin, but I'm not worried about getting wounded from roaches. I'm more worried about getting cheese onto the wheel and adding more enemies right away. Although I'm not super concerned about a couple of rats. But one thing I am eyeballing here is the fact that I have 12 cheese in my party, and I'm not super keen on the idea of having cheese on my people. I'd almost rather be taking wounds than adding cheese to the wheel right now. So, especially because I can later convert cheese into clearing those wounds with my major heal ability. So what I might want to do is snag some cheese from, I guess I'll take it from Filch right now. And yeah, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Filch's cheese. I'm going to take 3 of Filch's cheese. And the reason is that's going to take me to 6. With 6 cheese, I can level up. And that will allow me to grab one of these abilities. Now, again, first aid I usually give to Nez. So my options are Cure, Fortify, or Thundersqueak. I don't usually give her Thundersqueak because I don't usually have her doing a lot of fighting. Fortify. You may use this ability anytime during your mouse's turn. All mice on the same tile add 1 to their defense until this mouse's next turn. She could take that, and the reason I would be considering that is it might help me avoid adding cheese to the wheel when these guys come piling in. But even if I was to retroactively grab more cheese from Filch, he only, I think, has 1 more cheese left. So she could level up and get Fortify, but she wouldn't have the cheese to use it. So instead, what I think I'm going to do is just use this opportunity to grab the Cure ability. It's not relevant now. It might not be relevant on the next tile, but she's going to need it eventually, and you definitely want it when poison comes up. What the Cure ability does is it allows you to heal poison wounds, which almost nothing else can except for a couple of special items. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab that. The main point here is getting her that ability that I know I want to get her, but also she's spending all of her cheese. And what that's going to allow her to do is if she gets attacked, when the roaches come in, she's going to be the first one attacked. And when she gets attacked, she's going to take wounds instead of getting cheese, and as a result, there would be no cheese going onto the wheel. Now, I couldn't get rid of Filch's cheese too, but, you know, what are you going to do? There's only so much you can accomplish on one turn. So I think she's She's leveled up. That's a free action. She's not moving. She's not going to spend an action to do anything else. She can't trade again to get more cheese to use an action to heal or anything like that. So I think she's just going to search and not find anything. And we come now to the roaches. Let's see how far they can move. Only 2 spots. That's nice. Only 1 spot. That's very nice. Only 1 spot. Very nice. And 3 spots. So that pretty much played out about as expected. You might expect on average you get 1, maybe 2 roaches involved. And we know they're attacking Tilda first. So I know right now I'm not going to cheese the wheel this turn unless they roll cheese when they're attacking. Nothing I can do about that. And there we go. He rolled 2 cheese while attacking. So he doesn't hit her. She doesn't roll any defense, but we did just trigger a surge. Now what happens is you add the cheese to the wheel. However much you add it to the wheel. Then you clear the cheese wheel as part of resolving the surge, so there is no cheese carryover. We had 7 cheese technically on the wheel, but it all goes away. We don't come back around and have 1 left over when we've resolved the surge. So we'll clear the cheese wheel and we trigger the surge. First thing that happens on the surge is we move up the hourglass on the chapter track, which will affect later encounter cards and so forth. And we're that much closer to the end game, but we're doing pretty well on the timer. So I'm not too worried about that. But then, of course, we're also adding rats. We have our encounter card is 2 rats. So they add to the initiative. Because they're added to a combat with enemies already in place, they're simply added to the bottom of the track, which isn't always good because you might be towards the end of the initiative order. But right now, I've got 3 mice going before they move. But they, again, are going to come in on the minion entry spaces, and I think you still spread them out. So that's more or less where they're coming because this is a minion entry space, but it's full. And that is all the roaches. They're all done, and it's now Filch's turn. Now, I don't like greedy roaches, but I also don't like rats, and I usually like to attack rats with Filch. However, the reason I like to do that is it allows him to take cheese off the wheel. There is no cheese on the wheel, so I think what he's going to do is attack one of these roaches. I think I'm going to attack the one that's somewhat far away, and I am also going to note that all of the mice are going to be able to move before the roaches go. So I think I'm going to have all of the mice either go up or down to try to stay away from the enemies on the other side as much as possible. So I think what I'm going to do is have Filch. Yeah, I'm just going to have Filch move down this way. He can move 5 spaces, but I think I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then he's going to attack. I think I'm going to use his bow. The rats are below him in initiative, but I think I might actually, just because there's greedy roaches here, I might get a bunch of cheese on the wheel. It might be a little dodgy, but I think I'm going to save the rats to try to have Filch kill them to take cheese off the wheel if I need to. So he's going to attack this roach. Now, attacking the other roaches is actually not an option for him, because if you are adjacent or in a space with an enemy, your ranged attack has to target them first. So he's going to attack the roach with the bow, because using the dagger would be silly. They're above him in initiative. He gets 1 hit. He does add a cheese. And 1 hit is blocked. So he did not accomplish very much. And as a result, he's done. But it's now Colin's turn. He can move a number of spaces. I think he'll come over here and cozy up with Filch and try to kill that same roach. That is a dead roach, but did he cheese the wheel? He did. However, I like having 1 fewer greedy roach around. Nez now, I think, is going to, especially because he's got 2 defense now, I think he's just going to move like so. Now remember, I can move through this space because when I'm in that space with even a single mouse, I'm not outnumbered, and therefore I can leave the space. He gets 3 hits. That's a guaranteed kill on the roach, but he does not cheese the wheel, therefore we just remove him. Okay. Now it is the rat's turn, so this rat does have a 1 in 3 chance of reaching Tilda, but the roaches are not going to be able to do much. Now this guy might be able to reach Nez, but in virtue of having him closer, he was able to take that roach out, so that's the risk I'm running there. But that was Nez's turn, and we come now to the rats. This guy can move 3, so he will go 1, 2, 3, and attack Tilda. He scores 1 hit, she rolls 2 defense, and blocks the hit. That was not much. This guy is going to roll his movement. He can move towards the closest mouse and then stop. He'll go to the highest option in initiative, that's Filch. Attacking for 2. Filch rolls his 2 defense and blocks. The rat's accomplished nothing, but when their turn is over, they do move up. Tilda now has her turn. I think we're just going to stay away from those roaches, and I don't, for the same reason, I don't, well, with 2 roaches down, I'm not too worried about the cheese wheel, but I do have 1 cheese on the wheel, so I think what I'm going to do with her is just keep clear of the bad guys. So I'm going to have her move way over here and search. To no avail. Alright, roach's turn. Let's see how they move. Of course, he got a 3. 1, 2, and 3, and then he attacks Nez, scoring 2 hits. Nez only has 1 cheese. He is rolling 2 defense. Alright! That walnut shell breastplate is really sturdy. So, you know, they're eating cheese, but it's not an automatic hit. You can still block their hits. It's just when they hit, they eat cheese instead of wounding. But he was able to block it, so that didn't add any cheese to the wheel, which is nice. This guy also got a 3, which is very unfortunate because despite all my machinations of moving away from them, he is still adjacent to Nez and able to attack him. That's too bad. And he also got 2 hits. Come on, Nez, you can do it. No! Okay, so Nez loses his cheese, which then goes onto the wheel, and he takes a wound from the other hit that didn't have any cheese to take. So that was very unpleasant. It's now Filch's turn. Let's do our best to get some of that cheese off the wheel. He is higher than the rat in initiative, so I think what he's going to do is use his dagger. That's 2 hits. That's an automatic kill, but he might cheese the wheel still. And lo and behold, he did. Wow. Okay. Not having the best luck here on this tile, but, you know, I've been pretty lucky so far, so I can't complain. Filch does add so we added cheese to the wheel. Filch then takes it up right off again, so I'm not going to go through that. I'm just going to give him a cheese. All right. But, you know, in virtue of the fact that, you know, we didn't move this, but had anybody else been the one doing the kill, we would have had 3 instead of 2. So it's still good that Filch was the one who did that. And I think for the same reason, instead of having Colin attack, I am going to have Colin use his give order to allow Filch to shoot that rat with his bow. That's 2 hits. Now he is rolling 2 defense because it's not the dagger. And once again, he cheesed the wheel, so we did kill him and didn't add cheese to the wheel, but we also didn't take any off, unfortunately. But again, anybody else with that same defense roll would have put cheese on the wheel. But Filch did gain cheese as a result of that. And now Colin can't move, because that's a restriction on his give order ability. So he can't move and then engage the roaches, but he can still search. So I'll go ahead and do that. And he found something. Let's hope it's good. It's a scroll for Invoke Cheddar Golem. This says basically when a mouse uses the scroll in battle, its battle becomes a 4 and its defense becomes a 3. And then once there are no more minions remaining on the tile with the scroll's user, the effects of the scroll end. So basically you turn into a big hulking brute. Now, it's not clear from this, but it has been clarified in the fact that when you transform into the Cheddar Golem, you're not benefiting from your gear. So he'd just be running around rolling 4 attack and 3 defense melee. He's already rolling 3 and 2, so it's a benefit. If Nez was to try to use it, it would be a wash for his attack most of the time, and it would be a slight increase to his defense. So it wouldn't be that great for some people. But here's the kicker on this. In order to use this scroll, you have to have 3 lore. The only person outside of an item boost that can use that is Maginos, who's not in my party. So I don't have anybody that can use this scroll, as nice as it might be. So as a result, I'm going to make use of the roll where Colin is going to discard that card rather than keep it, and instead gain a cheese. Now the Rat Warriors are gone, so I don't need to worry about them. And I should have also, in triggering the surge, I forgot to get rid of that encounter card. So let me go ahead and discard the encounter card as well. And that's just because in the event that I do fill this up again, I would advance the page, but there would be no face-up encounter card. There's no surge rules for the tile, so there would be no additional enemies coming up. But it is Nez's turn. And I think what Nez is going to do is try to squish one of those roaches and then try to move away from them. However, this roach cannot fail to reach Colin and Filch, so there's no point in killing the further one or anything like that. So I think I'm just going to move over here and squish the close one. No matter what, he's going to get attacked, but he's out of cheese, which is actually probably good for him to be the one getting attacked. So I'll do it that way. He scores 1 hit. He does gain a cheese, but I can always give that away, which I think I'm going to do. Let's see if that killed this roach. It did not. Okay. Well, he's still going to give away his cheese because he's going to be the first one attacked. And I'll go ahead and give that. I have to give it to Colin or Filch. What are their cheese levels right now? They both have 4. Okay, I'll just give it to Colin. Alright, and we come around now to Tilda. And I think what Tilda wants to do is start curing some wounds. She doesn't have any cheese, but she can come up here, and this is actually a way I can game this a little bit. Yeah, because Nez has no cheese. If she moves up here, she's going to be the next one attacked after Nez, because they're going to go for the closest first. And, yeah, well, we'll see how it plays out, but she might be the next one attacked, and if so, I'd like her to have no cheese. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trade with Colin and take 2 of his cheese, and then I'm going to spend 2 cheese and my action to activate the major heal ability, which basically says I can pick one mouse on the same space as this mouse or an adjacent space, and remove up to 2 wound markers from that mouse. Or I can choose 2 mice on the same or adjacent spaces and remove 1 from each. In other words, 2 heals from 2 mice nearby for the cost of 2 cheese. So Colin, you are now going to lose a wound, and Nez can lose a wound. So everybody is fully healed for the expense of 2 cheese, but that's her turn because it does use up her action. Now the greedy roaches. This guy can't fail to move the 1 to pile in. He would then attack Nez. He cheeses the wheel automatically and rolls 1 hit. Nez rolls 2 defense, gains a cheese, which is then eaten, and goes on to the wheel. So that was pretty horrible. We added 2 cheese to the wheel despite all my machinations. Okay. Then this roach can only move 1, so he is actually going to move 1, and now if he could have moved here, he would then I think would have attacked. I guess he would have still attacked the closest mouse. So he's going after Nez. He gets one hit. Come on, Nez. Use that press plate. Wow, you suck. Okay, Nez takes a wound because he is out of cheese. So we didn't cheese the wheel at least, but we're not rolling very well today. But that's all right. All right, Filch is just going to try to kill him a roach. Unless I want to search with him, but I think I want to get some of these roaches out of here pretty quick. So he'll just attack with the bow as the best option. He'll gain a cheese and score 2 hits, so it's an automatic kill. Cheese the wheel. Filch gains a cheese for his kill, and it doesn't come off the wheel. So we're going to be triggering another surge here pretty quickly. But that's actually okay because we only have 1 tile to go, and we're only on page 2 right now. So if we go in there on page 3, I'm not super worried, unless we get a couple of captures or something on there. That's Filch's turn. Colin is, I think, going to go ahead and just move here and try to kill this guy. And, yeah, we'll see what happens. He gets 2 hits, so that's got to be a dead roach. He did not cheese the wheel. So the roaches are gone, which is good. And that's Colin's turn. He moved and attacked, so he's pretty much done. Now, what's going to happen is Nez on his turn, he can't get us out of here. I have to get to this space. So I am going to add cheese to the wheel and trigger a surge, but I actually want that because I'd rather be on page 3 with no cheese on the wheel than roll in there 1 cheese away from a surge right off the get-go on that last tile. So, Colin, I'm not too worried about. Nez, I think, is going to move. Try to get us close to the exit. And then he'll just surge and not find anything. So that was Nez's turn. And again, we now cheese the wheel, which we would then clear and go up a page. So we're now on page 3. Tilda's turn. Now, taking stock of our cheese, we've got 9 cheese in the party. Somebody could level up. That wouldn't be too bad. But if I do that and if I healed Nez for his wound, that would cost me 2 cheese, so I would be down to 1 cheese in the entire party. I think I don't want to do that. So the question is, do I want to level and have 3 cheese? Or do I want to cure and have 7 cheese, or do nothing and have 9? I think I'd rather cure Nez just to be safe, and then potentially save cheese for Filch. So I might have only 5 cheese in the party, but I'm okay with that going on to the last tile. So I think Tilda will go ahead and, what's her cheese status right now? She's got no cheese. She needs to borrow some. I think she'll take it from Filch. She'll move here, trade with Filch, taking 2 cheese, spending those 2 cheese to heal Nez. On Filch's turn, he's going to go ahead and roll his movement. He can get all the way to the exit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then he's going to search. He finds something. I can finally use the find ability. So he's going to give up 2 cheese in order to use that. And that's basically, if you look at the find ability, it costs 2 cheese, but it says you may use this ability after successfully rolling. So you don't have to declare it first. And then instead of drawing 1 card and just getting that card, you actually draw the top 3 and you pick your favorite, which does 2 things. It gives you more chances of getting good stuff, but it also allows you to avoid potentially bad stuff. Unless all 3 are bad, which is pretty unlikely, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So I love the find ability for both of those reasons. And we got some nice stuff. Okay. So I'm going to be pretty quick about this, but basically the upshot here is I really like the enchanted bow for Lily, possibly Maginos, neither of whom are in my party. So this is maybe something I might want to pick later, but right now, probably not. The Mystic Blade is two-handed, precluding the use of shields. It's not much better than Colin's starting sword. You might give it to Maginos or somebody, but again, Maginos isn't here. Nez doesn't want to use it, so not my favorite item. I love this when I have somebody who can use it. I really like the Warding Staff as Tilda's option. It gives her +1, so she's attacking with 3, and it adds 1 to her defense. So she goes from a 2-2 fighter to a 3-3 fighter with 1 item. I really like that. I'm going to go ahead and give that to her. So I'm going to take that Warding Staff. And now Filch has it, and he did already move. Now I probably should have searched before moving, but we'll be able to get that to Tilda pretty quick. All right, so that was Filch's turn. Colin is aware of the fact that he's already searched, and Nez, I'm not going to search and add cheese to the wheel. So if Colin can get us out of here, which I don't think he can. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, he's 1 short. So Colin really doesn't have too much that he can do. He could spend a cheese to give somebody else a chance to search. No, here's what he's going to do. Actually, he's going to spend a cheese for give order. Now, what give order? Oh, I'm sorry. No, okay. Let me back that up. Because he had really no reason to move when he rolled that 4. So let's put him back where he was. If he spends a cheese to do give order. Now, the reason I didn't move is moving didn't help me. And give order requires you to do that instead of moving. Choose a mouse on the same tile as a mouse. That mouse may perform 1 action. That action can be scurry, which is a movement. So Tilda can move. The reason I'm doing that is that allows me to move her over here. And then on her, well, she's not going to get a turn. Does that actually help me? No. I was thinking if Colin was here, he could trade, grab that, and then he could give it to her or something like that. But that actually isn't worth the cheese to do that. She's not going to have a turn. I could move Nez up there and grab it, but I don't want him to have it. So I'll just spend a cheese to let Nez search instead. Since I already spent the cheese, let's just do that. You find something, let's hope it's good. Desperate Rescue. Play this card at any time on this mouse's turn to immediately return 1 captured mouse to play. Alright, so this is very, very nice if you get a mouse captured. It doesn't prevent the page from going up when you get captured. It doesn't prevent the consequences of capture, like losing equipment and things like that. But it allows you to get that mouse right back again. And, they can rejoin the fight, which is pretty cool. The odds of getting captured on the final tile are relatively low. And the only reason I mention that is I might potentially discard this in order to get him cheese instead, because you can always discard 1 for cheese. I only have 4 cheese in the party now in virtue of all that I've spent, so it's kind of a 6 of one, half a dozen or the other. There's good and bad stuff for each, but maybe I'll just play it safe and keep the Desperate Rescue just in case. So that was Colin's turn. It's now Nez's turn. He will get his 4 spaces and move us on. So he now uses the flip space. We flip the tile, and we're on to the courtyard. We then position ourselves on the flip space to begin the fight. We clear our search markers, and we refer to the storybook to see what happens. Alright, so what's going on with this final tile? Well, quite a bit actually. Couple of things to bear in mind here. I'm not going to again read the flavor text, but basically they get out of here, they see a place to escape into a hole in the tree, and they're like, yay, we're out, hooray. And then they realize, uh-oh, there's a big crow on the wall, and the crow is not friendly. But the good news is, or slightly good news, is the crow hurts everybody. So friend and foe alike, everybody always has to roll. Now, a lot of times when people aren't moving or aren't moving far, I haven't been rolling their movement. Technically, you roll their movement every time, and it just usually doesn't matter. On this tile, it does matter. You have to roll their movement at the start of their turn, and if they roll a 1, even if they didn't want to move, if they rolled a 1 on their movement die, the crow hits them for 1 unblockable wound. Now the good news is that'll kill most of your enemies in one shot. Now there are some enemies that have multiple hit points, but a rat or a roach just gets killed outright. But you're also taking wounds, and you have to, get out of here, and that some bad luck can really happen here. The other element here is the space here where the hole in the tree is. Now, there's a couple of rules here. One is, first of all, you're safe from the crow if you're on that space. You have to get all mice onto that space with no enemies left on the tile to win the game before time runs out. Now, if you manage to do that, that's great. But there's a couple of rules that apply to this as well. One, if you're on this space, you can only see that one adjacent space. So if you're here with a ranged attack, that's still the only space you can attack. You can also only move to it from that adjacent space. So you can't move to it from this space or from this space. Now you might wonder, is that because of this root here, these roots? And I guess in my mind the answer is that this root is just way too big. You can't move across it. That's why you can't get to that spot. Is that applying down here? Again, your group's going to have to make a call. What I generally do, I'll just tell you, I say you can't move across that big root here, but you're fine down here. You're fine around here. You could even move from here to here, but not like this. Usually doesn't come up, usually doesn't matter, but you're basically just dealing with this adjacent space. Okay, those are the only rules for this tile. The one here is a story moment, and then again you have a bit of flavor text and resolution after you win it, but we'll deal with that once we're victorious. Because of that, there is no special setup for this tile. There's no special surge, and therefore we're going to wind up drawing an encounter card to see what we're facing. So we'll go ahead and do that now. And we get yet another ambush card, but we are now on page 3, so we're dealing with 1 spider and 2 rats as our encounter, and the surge is another spider. Now there is a rule in this game that is worth mentioning here, and that is that if you trigger a surge with an enemy for whom you do not have the requisite number of minion figures, like actual figures for the game, so like the game comes with 6 rats and 8 roaches. If you for some reason had a combination of encounter and surge that said you should have 7 rats, you just don't place that 7th rat. If I still have a spider on the map when I trigger a surge that says add a spider, I just don't add that 2nd spider. But if I had the centipede, I would still add the spider because they have different figures. It's kind of weird. It's a little bit chancy, but that is the rule. So in case it comes up, or in case that comes up for you, that's something to be aware of. But we have a spider and we have the 2 rats. The rules for placing these enemies is you first start with your melee minions, and I believe you start with your large ones first. So let's go ahead and check that rule really quick. And here is the placement rules in the rule book. Basically it says place in this order. You start with any minions that have range. That would be the elite rats, and maybe Captain Verst later on. We'll come to them when they come up. But you are not going to have any ranged minions on our current tile, so we ignore that. We then go on to one at a time place any large minions on the empty minion entry space that is closest to the mice, and then after that we'll place any small melee minions on any available, not full, minion entry spaces, and again we spread them out as much as possible. So, bouncing back to the map, we need to add both a spider to initiative, and we need to add rats to the initiative, and then we need to put them on the map as well. Now, the closest space to the mice, there's 2. There's one here, it really doesn't matter, so I'll just go ahead and put the spider here, because why not? And then the rats are spread out as much as possible among the remaining spaces. So that would be how we place our enemies for this tile. Now the rats we've seen, they have the aggressive ability, etc. The spider is nasty for the following reason. It only has 2 battle, so it's not that heavy hitting, but it has 3 hit points. You have to wound it 3 times to kill it, and it's rolling 3 defense dice, so it's a pretty tough nut to crack. It also, when it hits, does poison wound damage instead of regular wound damage. This is one of the reasons why it's nice to have Tilda and get her that cure ability ASAP, because that's going to be right now the only means I have of getting rid of poison wounds. We also have just added enemies to the chapter track, and therefore we're going to shuffle our initiative. Colin is second, not first, so he gains a cheese. And Filch is going first, so we will go ahead and begin battle now. Now again, the first thing I have to worry about is the fact that I begin my turn rolling my movement. I'm going to be able to move 3 of my guys before the enemy moves, so I have a shot at least of killing that spider or maybe killing the rats. Now, I'm not going to be able to move all of my guys before the spiders move, or the rats. Now this rat, not a factor, so I'm worried about these 2 guys. I'm virtually guaranteed of being able to take this guy out, and then the spider is going to come along and munch on whoever's left over here. I think what I might want to do is wait and see how my movement for at least Filch goes, and then possibly try to hit him with the bow and see if I get a lucky shot. Because remember, the bow can hit for potentially 6 damage. We'll see. I'm not right now, until I kill that spider, I'm not worried about the surge. So let's just see how this plays out. Alright, his movement is, you rolled a 1. I always do on this. On this tile, I roll nothing but 1s for myself. Alright, so 3 arrows, or 3 attack dice against the spider. Let's see how this goes. Okay, 2 hits, and he's rolling his 3 defense. He blocks 1 of those hits, so he has taken 1 wound, which is not too shabby. And I think then Filch is going to move up here in virtue of the fact that he wants to stay away from that rat. He wants to move closer to the exit. But I want to move here because I'm going to try to use Colin and Tilda to try to kill that spider if I possibly can. So they're all going to be in melee anyway. This is the melee space that's closest to the exit that can still affect that spider. Tilda, if she was using her mace, would be dealing with that fact, but remember we got her the warding staff, so she's rolling 3 melee dice anyway. So she's hitting as hard as Colin right now. Or she will be whenever I get her that that staff. Now remember, Filch is the one carrying it, so I'm not too worried there. But now it's Colin's turn. Colin needs to start by rolling his movement. He rolls a 2, thank goodness. He will move to that same space and also attack that spider, looking for swords. He gets only 1. Okay, well the spider cheesed the wheel, but he did not block anything. So he actually took another wound despite rolling 3 defense dice. We're getting pretty lucky. Remember, Tilda might be able to kill him, but on top of that, the crow might kill him potentially on his turn. So we're doing all right so far. Now Tilda, remember, she has to start with her movement. She did not roll a 1. This is very important because I want her to attack and I want any pressure on her. So she's going to move here. She's going to trade with Filch. Get that warding staff. That's a free action. She's going to equip. That's also a free action. It's 2-handed, so she has to unequip the mace, although I don't care about that. And then she's going to attack for 3 versus that spider, try to take him out. Alright, so she gained a cheese, which is always handy. And she scored 2 hits. We'll see how that goes. He cheesed the wheel, so I'm getting closer and closer to adding a another spider to the fight, which would kind of stink. But that spider didn't block any of those hits. So we actually managed to kill the spider before he could move, which was very, very handy. And that is Tilda's turn. Spider's gone, so let's get rid of him. We might get another one back any minute now, but we'll see. Now this rat warrior is not going to be able to fail to reach Nez, but we'll see how close he gets. He did not roll a 1. I guess he could have rolled a 1 and in virtue of dying failed to reach Nez, but he rolled a 2 and attacks Nez because Nez is the closest mouse. He got 2 hits. Nez is rolling 2 defense. He gets a cheese and suffers 2 wounds, unfortunately. So we are racking up the wounds, and it's a good thing he's got 4 hit points because he's going next and rolling his movement. The crow could potentially kill him if he had taken another wound. This rat over here is rolling his movement. He rolls a 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, wow, he actually can reach them. So he's going to attack the highest in initiative. That would be Filch. He misses. Okay. We come now to Nez and move them up in initiative. What am I doing with cheese here? I got 3, 5, 6, 7. Only 7. Okay. Well, Nez, I have to start with his movement. Okay. He did not roll a 1. This is very, very good because everybody else... Wait a minute. Yeah, everybody else except Tilda is going to be able to go. I want to get them close to the exit, so I'm going to move him over like so. Keeping him close to Tilda because she's going to have to do some healing here pretty quick. And then he's going to try to stomp that rat. He successfully stomped that rat. Let's see if he cheesed the wheel. He does not. That rat is gone. And that's Nez's turn. It's now Filch's turn, and again, first thing we have to do is roll movement. He did not roll a 1. He's going to be able to get onto that space, but if I do so, I won't be able to attack that rat. I want to attack that rat with my bow and try to kill him. Actually, I'm adjacent to him. Doesn't really look like it, but I think those spaces are adjacent. I can use my dagger on that guy. But I think I'll use the bow just because it increases my odds of rolling cheese. I'm not worried about a surge right now because I think I'm going to be fine with just one enemy on the board. Alright, I gained a cheese and 1 hit. We'll see how he does defending that. He does block it, unfortunately. So that's Filch's turn, and I think he's going to spend the rest of his turn getting out of danger. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because, yeah, he's got a wound, but he can get out of the effect of the crow. Colin rolls his move. Does not roll a 1. This is very important. Now, just because I rolled the move, I don't need to do it yet. That's how far he can move when he moves. But he can attack first, so he's going to do that. Scores 1 hit only, which gets blocked, and now he will also, I think... Oh, gosh. Yeah, they're going to attack Tilda next, so I think she's fine. 2, 3... 4. He can also get onto that space. The rat will move to the closest mouse and stop, but I still roll his movement to see if the crow kills him. It does not. So he goes there, and then he attacks the closest mouse, which would be Tilda. He rolls 2 attack, hits once. In virtue of her warding staff, she's rolling 3 defense, so she blocks the heck out of that, and she's not too worried. But on her turn, she has to roll her move. No 1. That's pretty lucky. And I think she will spend her action healing Nez for the cost of 2 cheese if she has it. She only has 1, so she'll steal Nez's cheese and then spend it to heal Nez. And then she will move, because she spent her action healing, she can't attack, so she will move her 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 onto that space. We come now to Nez. He's in much less danger now. His movement is a 1, so he does take an unblockable wound. He's adjacent, so he can try to kill that guy for 4. He gains a cheese and rolls 1 hit, which does in fact kill that rat. Okay, so that's the end of that combat, and he got enough movement. No, he did not. He actually can't. Suppose he had. Suppose he'd rolled 3 movement, if I had 3 movement, I could go like this and bop him out there, and it's game over because all the enemies are gone and all my uncaptured mice are on that space. That's the victory condition. Now, he only rolled 2, so I don't even have that as an option. He's only going to be able to get here. But it actually would have been an interesting decision because none of my mice have searched yet, and I could cycle through my initiative a number of times adding cheese and just searching away to kind of milk this last tile. It's a little cheesy, but I like to do it because sometimes you get gear like a warding staff that you can carry with you from tile to tile. So, it's not an option. So it wasn't a call that I had to make. I'm not being cheesy in virtue of doing this. But Nez has attacked and moved. That's his turn. We come now to Filch. Filch has basically nothing to do except search, so I'll go ahead and do that. But before I do, I want to check on my cheese situation. I have 7 cheese right now. If I spend 2 cheese on find, I will only have 5. The reason that matters is I really, unless I trigger a surge, which I don't think I'm going to do, I don't have any way of getting more cheese. And as a result, I would not be able to level up because I need 6 cheese to level up. So the question is find more valuable to me than leveling up one of my mice? And I think the answer is no. So I think what I'm going to do is pass Filch's cheese over to Colin. Actually, I might pass it to... Maybe I'll pass it to Colin and give him my 3 cheese. And that will allow Colin to have 6 in order to level up. I'll get him one of his nice abilities. And then Filch will still search. He just can't use the find when he's successful. Notice I'm not worried about my wounds anymore. There's nothing around here that can hurt me except the crow. And Nez can only get that hit once, and he's got 4 hit points. So Filch will search. Doesn't find anything. Colin will level up. What happened? Colin will level up, spend his 6 cheese, and grab an ability. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm going to just go ahead and grab Battle Leader, which is another old favorite of mine. And then Colin, that's a free action. He's got nothing else to do. He'll search and find something. Whoops, no, I don't want that. I want to draw a search card. Shriek Bug, treachery card, play immediately. Roll a number of dice equal to this mouse's lure. If the number results total 3 or less, add 2 rat warriors to the tile on any minion entry space and add their card to the initiative track if necessary. So, wow, that changed everything here. Not only did I not find gear, but you never know, I might not, but I'm probably going to, I'm probably going to add enemies. But let's see. Colin's lure is a 2. So I'm going to roll dice equal to my mouse's lure, which is 2. So I'm going to roll 2 dice. And I get 4. If the number rolled is 3 or less, I add the rat warriors. I got a 4. So that means I'm not adding enemies here. And I think the idea here is if you see a shriek bug, it might make so much noise that the enemies come and find you. They're alerted to your presence or something. And if you're smart enough, you might be able to get around it or placate it or soothe it so that it doesn't shriek. But either way, I was able to get around that. So all that happened was my search didn't benefit me. All right, Tilda. Similarly, she could heal, but she has no reason to, so she will search and not find anything. Nez, on his turn. Now I come to it. Do I want to move on there or not? Well, first thing I have to roll to see if he gets hit. He does not. I'm just going to milk it one more round at least. He's going to search and find something. Finds a coin shield, which is a nice item to actually give to Colin. So he will trade that over to Colin real quick. That adds 1 to the defense plus an extra bonus against ranged attacks if you roll the right thing. Notice he's a warrior, so he could use it, but his weapon that he's normally using requires 2 hands, and he already has an item that he's going to be carrying to the next chapter. So what I would do is allow him to keep the walnut breastplate, allow Colin to keep the coin shield. Filch is keeping the accurate bow, and Tilda's keeping the warding staff. So we actually have gotten some really good gear for our mice to keep going forward. I forgot to get rid of Colin's. I want to discard that shriek bug. He's not keeping that in his inventory. We go around to Filch again, and in virtue of that we choose the wheel, not that we care. And Filch will search, not find anything. Colin will equip. Did I not give that to him? I thought I gave him the coin shield. Who got the coin shield? It's in his pack. Why is it not letting him equip it? I must have had the wrong person selected. Okay. So Colin now has equipped. So he's rolling 3 defense. Tilda's rolling 3 defense. Nez is rolling 2. And Filch can shoot from a distance, staying safe. So we've got a lot of healthy mice here. All right, but Colin can't find anything. Can't do very much. Forgive me, my cold is acting up here. But we do have 1 cheese in the party. I really don't need it for anything else, and Colin has that give order. So I think what I'm going to do is have him trade with Nez to grab that cheese, and then he will spend his cheese on give order to allow, it really doesn't matter, I guess, Filch a chance to search again, because Tilda's going to be able to search again anyway. No luck, so it was worth a shot because the cheese doesn't do me any good anyway. And then Tilda will search and not find anything. And, I could keep going on like this and milking it, but especially because my party is such that Colin's got one of the best items for him. Nez has a decent one for him. Filch has my favorite for him. Tilda has my favorite for her. You can only keep 1 item per mouse as you go forward, so I think I'm good. And I'm just going to move Nez on and declare victory. All right. So there you have it. We have completed chapter 1 successfully. We only went up 3 pages. We had a couple of wounds. Those then go away as you move to the next chapter. But we'll very quickly go over to the storybook and check out the fact that there is a continuation of the story. You would read this when you're done. And I'll just summarize this for you. But basically, they go into the tree and they find a little mouse city in there full of mice that also can talk, even though presumably they're natural mice as opposed to mice that have been transformed from people. So apparently mice can just talk in this world, which is fine. But basically they meet these mice, they're befriended, they're treated well. And then the setup for chapter 2 is that the leader of those mice is missing her daughter, who serves as a ranger. She goes out and explores. She's been looking through the castle and is overdue to come home. So chapter 2 is going to be Colin and party going out and trying to find her and bring her back to the mouse city of Barksburg. That's pretty much where we're at. So in closing, I'm just going to summarize really quickly what you would do in order to complete and wrap up for a campaign before you head on to the next chapter. Remember, the next chapter, the initiation there, is going to be picking your mice for that. But before you move on, obviously, what we're going to do, we're going to clear search markers and everything. I have a macro that lets me do this all in one fell swoop, but I'm going to walk you through it instead. You're going to clear any wounds from any of your mice. They don't carry over. You're also going to remove any cheese from any of your mice. I don't think we had any left. I think we spent it all. If we had had cheese, we would have gotten rid of it. We're also going to get rid of the party items that we have, namely the fishhook. Turned out we didn't need it, but who knew? Okay, so that gets discarded. And if we have any items left that we're not keeping, you're going to keep always your starting equipment. whether you're using it or not. So Tilda will keep her mace, but she can keep one item. She's going to keep that. Filch is going to keep the accurate bow. Nez will keep the walnut shell, but he's going to have to discard Desperate Rescue. We didn't wind up needing it, which is a good thing. But, had I discarded it for cheese, that one extra cheese wouldn't have done much for me anyway. But yeah, basically, he's going to need to get rid of the Desperate Rescue card because that goes back into the search deck. He's keeping the breastplate instead. Now, you can keep tricks. So if he didn't have that breastplate, he could keep the Desperate Rescue card and carry that over. But he's going to want to keep the better item instead. So that's pretty much all we need to do. The next would be to set up for the next chapter or pack it up and somehow note down who had what, because not only are you carrying over that gear, but you've also got, we were able to get 3 level ups, so we had 3 people add skills to their ability lists, and as a result, we're a little bit more versatile going forward. So that would be all we would have to do to get ready for Chapter 2. I hope you found that helpful. Hope you found it enjoyable, fun. I hope you're liking the game. We're going to roll in and we're going to attack Chapter 2 here pretty quick. But for now, just want to say thank you for battling with me. And I'll see you in the next one. Fight true, brave mice. I'll see you later. Take care.